They had the smartest engineers, the fastest processors, and the most loyal customers in the world. On paper, they were unbeatable. In reality, they were already dead. This is the story of DEC, the company that proved you can build the best technology in history and still lose everything because you were right about the wrong thing. This is the series where we break down the deals, decisions, and power shifts that built and destroyed billion-dollar systems. For a long time, DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation, looked like the absolute peak of human engineering. In the 1970s and early 80s, if you were a serious scientist, a high-end researcher, or a global banker, you didn't look at IBM, you looked at DEC. Their machines didn't just work, they hummed with a level of precision and raw power that competitors couldn't touch. Their VAX systems were legendary. They were the backbone of the internet before the internet was a household name. They powered the laboratory experiments that won Nobel Prizes and the financial models that moved trillions of dollars. If you cared about performance, reliability, and engineering purity, you chose DEC. They didn't just build computers, they defined what a computer should be. They were the gold standard of the mini-computer era. And that's exactly where the tragedy begins. You see, DEC was a company built by engineers, for engineers. Their culture was one of intellectual rigor and technical excellence. At their headquarters, an old wool mill in Massachusetts known simply as the Mill, they solved the hardest problems in computing. They were proud, they were elite, and they were wealthy. DEC's leadership, led by the legendary Ken Olsen, believed in a clear, uncompromising vision of the future. Computing should be powerful, centralized, and controlled. They built systems designed for experts, machines that were massive, expensive, and beautiful in their complexity. They believed that a computer was a high-performance instrument, like a grand piano or a jet engine. It was something to be respected, maintained by specialists, and sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they were right, for a world that was already disappearing. Because while DEC was busy perfecting that vision, something else was spreading in the shadows. At first, it looked like a joke. It looked like a step backward. Small, cheap, underpowered machines built with off-the-shelf parts and used by hobbyists in garages, the personal computer. To the geniuses at DEC, the PC wasn't competition. It was a toy. It was an insult to the craft of computing. It was slower, less reliable, and worse in every measurable technical way. Ken Olsen famously dismissed the idea of the home computer, not because he lacked imagination, but because he couldn't imagine why anyone would want such a low-quality experience. But he made the fatal mistake that many giants make. He focused on the product and ignored the system. The PC wasn't competing on power, it was competing on accessibility. The PC was the people's computer. You didn't need $1 million budget or a clean room with raised floors and specialized cooling. You just needed a desk and a power outlet. Anyone could buy one, anyone could use it, and more importantly, anyone could build on top of it. This is the first layer where the power began to shift. DEC systems were proprietary. They were closed gardens. If you wanted to run software on a DEC machine, you often had to play by DEC's rules and pay DEC's prices. But the PC was an open frontier. Software developers don't build for the best machines. They build for the most common ones. It's a simple law of economics. As PCs began to flood offices and homes, the center of gravity in the entire industry shifted. The toy became the platform. IBM, once the stodgy rival, saw the shift and entered the market. Microsoft took control of the software layer. Intel focused on making the chips better and cheaper every year, and a wave of clone manufacturers, companies like Compaq and Dell, started scaling everything. Together, they created a feedback loop that DEC never saw coming. And this is the brutal reality of technology. Platforms don't need to be better, they just need to win. By the late 1980s, the PC wasn't a toy anymore. It had reached a critical threshold. It was good enough. In engineering, good enough is a dangerous phrase. To a DEC engineer, it was a slur, but to a business owner, it was a revolution. Why buy one expensive proprietary DEC VAX system for $500,000 when you could deploy 50 PCs for the same price? The PCs weren't as elegant, they weren't as pure, but they worked. They were compatible with everything else, and they were getting faster every 6 months. When something is cheaper, scalable, and good enough, the market doesn't hesitate. It migrates. DEC saw the numbers. They weren't blind. They tried to respond, but they were trapped by their own success. This is what historians call the innovator's dilemma. To fully embrace the PC world, DEC would have to destroy their own business. They would have to tell their loyal customers to stop buying their expensive mini-computers and start buying cheap PCs. They would have to slash their profit margins, fire their specialized technicians, and stop being the elite company they were so proud to be. And they couldn't do it. The culture of the mill resisted. They tried to have it both ways. They launched their own PCs, but they were half-hearted efforts, often designed to not compete with their larger systems. They built the Alpha chip, which was, for a time, the fastest processor on the planet. But they didn't know how to sell it to a mass market. They were a luxury car manufacturer trying to build a bicycle while still charging luxury car prices. In a systemic shift, hesitation is fatal. While DEC debated their internal strategy, the ecosystem locked them out. The world standardized around the Windows operating system. It standardized around Intel hardware. Distribution moved to companies that knew how to sell millions of boxes, not dozens of specialized systems. DEC was left outside. They were a giant standing on a shrinking island of proprietary technology. Their high-margin business was being eaten from below by PCs and from above by new networking technologies they had failed to dominate. By the early 1990s, the decline was no longer a trend, it was a landslide. Growth stalled. The massive overhead required to maintain their engineering excellence became a crushing burden. Thousands of the world's best engineers were laid off. In 1998, the end came. The second largest computer company in the world, the company that once thought IBM was its only peer, was sold for parts. It was absorbed by Compaq. Think about that irony. DEC was bought by a company that didn't even exist when DEC was at its peak. A company that built the very toys DEC had laughed at 15 years earlier. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was something much more painful for an engineering giant. It was irrelevance. DEC didn't lose because their technology failed. Their technology was incredible. They lost because their model failed. They built the future once. They practically invented the idea of interactive computing, but then they tried to protect it. They tried to own it, and the future moved on without them. They believed that better technology would always win. But the market doesn't reward better. It rewards adoption. It rewards compatibility. It rewards whatever spreads the fastest and connects the most people. Once a system starts to spread, it becomes an unstoppable force. You can't fight an ecosystem with a single product, no matter how perfect that product is. We've seen this pattern again and again throughout this series. Better products losing to better systems, better engineering losing to better distribution, better ideas losing to better timing. It happened to DEC, and it serves as a warning to every giant today, from Apple to Google to OpenAI. The moment you believe your perfection makes you untouchable is the moment you become most vulnerable. And every time a new technology emerges, the same question comes back. Are you building something better? Or are you building something that wins? Because DEC built something better. And that is exactly why they lost. If you want to understand how another company made the opposite mistake and accidentally gave away control of the entire software layer while trying to save their hardware, that story changes everything.